good, all of you beautiful people out there? How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, the podcast where we talk everything National Football League in season off season. It doesn't matter because it's football. I am your host, Double Diesel, and welcome to this Week 5 recap of Week 5 of the 2023 NFL football season. Before we get into the video, I'd like to ask, if you have not already, please like, subscribe, and share the video if you have not done so already. Helps boost the channel, helps get us out to more eyeballs in the algorithm. If you have not done that and you'd like to, that would mean the absolute world to me. Also, if you want to, go support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. Helps put food in my belly, helps support this channel. That would be greatly appreciated if you would like to do that. Link to that would be in the description down below. But let's get on with the show. Week 5 is officially in the books, and this was something that I thought coming into the week was not going to be the most entertaining week of football, just looking at the games on paper, but actually I was glad to be proven wrong. It was relatively entertaining for the most part. Not a whole lot of super close games, but a lot of interesting things to talk about. You know, Week 5, a lot of people say Week 5 is usually the point where you start saying, like, okay, this is the team we're most likely going to see for the remainder of the year. Still early enough where things can absolutely change, but you start getting a good feel of what a team's season is going to be like. And this is also the time of the year where a lot of the bottom feeders, a lot of the bad teams, start looking at mock drafts already. And the first team that I want to talk about that is in this conversation, that has not been in this conversation quite literally in my entire lifetime, is the New England Patriots. And those of you who saw the podcast last week, saw the clip that I posted on this channel, I went in on this team. I am a Patriot fan through and through, and I went in on this team because last week I didn't think it could get any worse than last week. The biggest deficit in Bill Belichick's entire coaching career, even going back to his days as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in the early 90s. You know, that was the worst loss in his entire career, and I don't think it could get any worse. Well, this team proved me wrong. They proved me wrong. And I can't even get mad. Last week I was furious. This week I've just sort of accepted it. This team is going nowhere. This is legitimately one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL as of right now. I am shocked that a Patriots team, a Bill Belichick coached New England Patriots football team, after getting embarrassed in front of a national audience. They were America's Game of the Week last week against the Dallas Cowboys, who are a Super Bowl contender in their own right, though maybe not to an extent that we might have thought. Well, we'll get to that later. And you thought, okay, this team is going to go back. They're going to go back to the drawing board. They're going to come out, and they're going to come out with a new set of fire. Instead, this team was defeated the moment it took the field. The second Mac Jones threw the pick 6 to Tyrann Mathieu, which I will admit is not entirely his fault. The second that play happened, it was like that was already a deficit too much to overcome. And that was the first score of the game. That was 7-0. And already it just felt like the team had just given up. And every bad team has that moment. They have moments where they could be doing well, everything's executing, everything's good. The second one thing goes wrong, the team just shuts down mentally and goes, well, here we go again. This team has dived into the here we go again mentality. Losers have that mentality. And the Patriots have become losers all of the sudden. After 20 consecutive years of nothing but pure dominance, this team now looks unrecognizable. And I'm not just talking about players. I'm not just talking about like certain coaches or whatever the fuck. I'm just talking about from a preparation standpoint, from a mentality standpoint, this team looks unrecognizable. They look lost. They look like they don't know what to do. They look so unprepared. 34 to nothing. 34 zip. 34 zip. At home. We used to demolish teams at home. For years, teams would be scared shitless coming into Foxborough. Now, Foxborough's the house of everybody, except for New England. I don't understand how a Bill Belichick coach team is that unprepared after getting their dicks kicked in the week before like that, like the way they did. How is it possible? I'm just looking at this because I'm like, I don't even know where to start. How is it possible that we fire Matt Patricia? Matt Patricia gets fired because he was not in any way, shape, or form qualified to be an offensive coach, let alone the offensive coordinator. How is it possible that we get rid of him and the offense gets worse? How is it possible? How is it possible that Mac Jones has regressed more? How is it possible that this offensive line that was solid all of a sudden can't block a fucking feather? How is it possible that a defense that, yes, it lost its two best players, but I didn't think, like, how did they take such a big step back? Like, the second half of that game, they looked checked out. Honest to God, that defense looked checked out, and I can't blame them because you can only do so much. Like, what's the point in trying to play elite defense and holding teams under 14 points a game when your offense can't even match that? It is a struggle for this offense to even reach 17 points. And that was the mindset after last week. Now it's a struggle for this team to even get to double digits. And against Dallas, that's one thing. Not a great offensive line going against that defense of the Dallas Cowboys, that's one thing. We thought that was one thing. But getting blown out, not just blown out, shut out at home to the fucking New Orleans Saints that, yes, they have a good defense. They have a really good defensive unit. But they're also a team that's just stuck in fucking purgatory. Derek Carr didn't even play that good of a game, and they still were able to move the ball up and down the field. And it's a whole argument that has started since then. It's like, who's to blame for this? Who's to blame for the state of this team? And to me, it's very simple. It's straight up and simple. The blame falls on Bill Belichick. I don't know how you can blame anybody else in this situation as far as who should take the most blame. There's not one thing that should take the only. Like, there's not one thing that you could point at and say that's the main problem. If we fix that problem, then everything will be fine. No, there's way more problems with this team. There's the offensive line that's in complete shambles, and everybody gets injured on that fucking unit, and they've been constantly rotating guys in and out. They've been a disaster. The receiving core can't separate worth a damn, and the guys on the team that can separate, they never fucking play them anyway. Mac Jones looks like a shell of himself. It looks like his confidence is shot. The running game has been completely non-existent, and that's the most frustrating thing to me. That's the frustrating thing, and that's the thing I'm most shocked about. Is like, hey, even if the passing game isn't that great, at least we had this run game with Ramondre, who burst onto the scene last year, with Zeke, who still has something left in the tank. And they've just have not had any sort of impact. I'm just shocked. I'm shocked. I'd never in a million years thought it would get this bad. I thought there'd be significant improvement because there was good things to build off of Mac's rookie year in 2021. And I know last year was such a train wreck, but did it really stunt Mac's development that much? Did it really stunt the offense's production and ability to be productive that much? Or is it Bill Belichick just being stubborn when it comes to bringing in guys for the offensive side of the ball? And that's why I said at the start of this that this all falls on Bill Belichick ultimately. Because he's not just the head coach, he's the general manager of this team. He has the say on the personnel, what coaches get brought in, who gets drafted. He has sole control of the roster. Robert Kraft, he stays out of all the football operations. Everything that is involved with the football team from a pure football standpoint, all is there because of Bill Belichick. Everyone there was brought in by Bill Belichick. And on the defensive side, I don't get worried about the defensive side. I will say, like, Belichick knows how to bring in defensive talent. He knows how to draft and develop defensive players. I'm not worried about his ability to do that. But offensively, it's gotten to the point where after Sunday, I'm like, does he genuinely give a shit about the offensive side of the ball? I don't think he cares enough to actually improve that unit because he's stuck in this mindset that only worked back in the early 2000s where, hey, it doesn't matter if we have that great of an offense because we'll build our defense to be championship caliber and we'll win Super Bowls and we'll win games that way. And you did win Super Bowls that way in the early 2000s. You won 3 Super Bowls doing it that way. But the NFL is constantly changing. The NFL is constantly evolving. You cannot build a roster the way you did in 2003, the way you can in 2023. It's not going to work. You're not going to be successful if you do that. You have to change. You have to evolve. You have to actually give a fuck about what you put on the offensive side of the ball. And people will come at me and say, well, he has done that. Look at Randy Moss. Look at Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon. You're right. It's not from a lack of trying. But for every Randy Moss, there's 6 N'Keal Harrys. Every Wes Welker, there's 6 Josh Boyces. Every fucking Gronk or Julian Edelman, there's 15 Aaron Dobsons. His ability to scout on the offensive side of the ball is borderline non-existent. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And it just makes me so sad as a fan because it feels like a team that has no direction. Now, I will say this. This team is in a position where next year, for 2024, and I never in a million years thought I'd be talking about next season, 5 weeks into the season as a Patriot fan. But for 2024, this team is set up to have a rebound year next year because they're going to have as of right now, per over the cap, they have $106 million in available cap space at the moment. They can use that to re-sign some key players, but bring in a lot of talent. They need it. They have the money. Belichick has used the excuse for years of like, well, we don't have the money. Well, this year, next offseason, he's going to have the money. They're going to have the money to spend. And they need to bring in some offensive talent. And if things go south still for the rest of the season, they're looking at a potential top 5, if not top 3 draft pick. And, like, look at just the remaining schedule for this team. Hold on. I should have had this pulled up. But as far as New England's remaining schedule, so they play the Raiders next week, who they just beat the Packers. I'm no longer confident in that game. That's most likely a loss. And then they play Buffalo at home. They're going to get demolished. Miami, that's a loss. Washington, our offensive line against that defensive line for Washington, yeah, fucking right. And then they play Indianapolis and Germany. And then they head into the bye week. There is a legitimate chance that this team going into the bye can potentially be 1-9. And now you're in full tank mode at that point. Honestly, if I'm New England, I'd be in full tank mode now. You can't compete this year with this team. Are you kidding me? And it blows my and this is another thing. Right before I sat down to record this, news broke that the Rams were trading Van Jefferson. Exciting young receiver, has nice upside, has played relatively well. And then he just got traded to the Falcons right before I sat down to record this. And I'm like, okay. So Belichick said he wanted to start over this week. They need to make changes, that they're going to make some serious changes. And yet, nice young receiver on the trade market that was given up for a, 6th, 7th round pick swap. Again, it goes into the mindset of like, I don't think he cares about the offensive side of the ball. I don't think he cares about bringing in talent on the offensive side. Because if he did, and he was serious about it, don't you think he would have been on that? Don't you think he would have been calling around saying, hey, you got any good receivers with some explosive upside that you might be looking to get off of? And again, it's like, I don't think he cares about it. And when I mentioned earlier about how they are fully prepared to be competitive again for next year, I would have faith, but Belichick cannot be the one controlling personnel. Belichick cannot be the person to be the general manager for next offseason. He can't. He has to have general manager duties stripped from him. Robert Kraft has to step in and take those responsibilities away from him. But I don't blame Kraft for not doing that, because the fear with Kraft is if you take GM duties away from him, then there's a chance Belichick isn't going to want to coach if he doesn't have full personnel control. And you know what? If that's the case, then Bill, 20 years of success. It was awesome having you. We would not have had the success we would have had had it not been for you and your contributions. But it's time to move on. If he's not willing to give up those responsibilities, then it's time to move on. Great, another 20-minute rant about this fucking team. Oh man. And that's the thing, I don't know where you turn around. I think the season is too long gone to be salvaged at this point. I'm hearing people say like trade for Kirk Cousins and do what? But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to something a little more positive. And let's talk about some of these other games. First I want to talk about is Cincinnati and Arizona. This was an intriguing game coming into the week. Mainly because, Arizona was much better than we thought they would be. Everyone just assumed they were going to be the worst team in football. Jonathan Gannon had that team playing extremely hard. And then the Cincinnati Bengals came into this week starting 1-3. The offense did not look good. Joe Burrow looked like the calf was clearly bothering him. And we didn't know what was going on with the Cincinnati offense and what was going on with Joe Burrow. So this was a huge game for them. The spread in this game was Cincinnati was only favored by 3.5 in this game. So, everyone's saying like, hey, this could be a sneaky upset alert potentially. And Cincinnati came into this game and it looked like the Cincinnati of old. And for Bengals fans, take a sigh of relief. Joe Burrow looked back to being his old Joe Burrow self. He was slinging it. He looked comfortable. His mobility looked good. It looked like that calf has healed up enough to the point where he's gotten his mobility back. Ja'Marr Chase, welcome back, baby. You've been playing, you've been healthy, but welcome back. He did not have a touchdown coming into this week, and he had 3 touchdown passes, or touchdown receptions, rather, in this game. Joe Burrow had 3 touchdowns, all to Ja'Marr Chase, and this was a big game for them, especially in a game where they didn't have T. Higgins. He was out for this game. Joe Mixon didn't really do much on the ground. They needed this guy. This was such a must-win game for this Bengals team because, like I said, they looked like a lost puppy on offense these first 4 games of the year. Because, yeah, they beat the Rams, but they didn't look good beating the Rams. They got humiliated by Tennessee last week. And this was a huge step in the right direction for them to say, no, we have the talent. We are a Super Bowl contending team. Let's just calm down, get it together, and go out and play like the Super Bowl champion caliber team that we are. So just seeing that from the Cincinnati Bengals is such a nice thing to see because, hey, I love Joe Burrow. I love the Bengals offense. If they can just get it together and get it and have this done consistently, and I now have the confidence that they are back and they will put on a performance like this more consistently. So that's a huge sigh of relief for Cincinnati. And for Arizona, they fought hard. They actually led at one point in this game. And it got a little nervous again for Cincinnati where it's like, oh my God, here we go again. And I'm like, oh, is Arizona going to pull off another relatively big upset? And then, Cincinnati took over at the end. But, same thing. Arizona's been playing incredibly hard for Jonathan Gannon. They did lose James Conner in this game, so that's going to be huge. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out for, but that's something to keep an eye on. Josh Dobbs had some plays where it's kind of like back down to earth a little bit. But yeah, I'm not super concerned about the Arizona Cardinals because, like I said, they didn't have any expectations coming into this year, and the fact that they're playing this well, is already more than Cardinals fans could ever ask for at this moment in time. So that's really all there is to say about that game, but it was great bounce back win for Cincinnati. And Arizona, hey, I wouldn't be too upset about this loss. Though I will say, like I said, I keep an eye on the extent of James Conner's injury going forward. Next game I want to talk about is Eagles-Rams. This was another America's Game of the Week, and this was going to be really, really interesting. Cooper Kupp making his grand return in this game after sustaining a serious injury in the middle of last season. He hasn't played in close to a year now, so he was coming back. How was the Rams offense going to look with him and the emergence of Puka Nacua, who came into this week leading the league in receptions and receiving yards? So that was something to keep an eye on. I want to talk about Philly first because Philadelphia ended up winning this game. And yeah, what else is there to say about the Philadelphia Eagles? They're still, they're undefeated right now. They're 4-0. They're one of 2 undefeated teams in the league right now. We'll talk about that second one later. And the scary thing about Philadelphia is they came in, they beat the Rams convincingly, and yet it still doesn't feel like this team is 100% right now. As in, there's still some rust and they're working it off. They are still not, there's still times where you see them, they're not fully clicking on defense still at some points. Offensively, they're still not as productive and as dominant as they were last year. Maybe some of that has to do with the fact that Shane Steichen left. But even despite that, they're still 4-0 and still look like a top 2 team in the NFC and top 3 team in the NFL, period. despite that. And that's what's scary is if this team, despite not looking like the world beater it was last year and still kicking everyone's asses, what is this team going to look like when they do finally get everything clicking and going? Defense has taken a bit of a step back, but I will say Jalen Carter does absolutely look like a hit. He is a friggin' monster. And offensively, brotherly shove aside, which, by the way, I'll give my 2 cents on that. Everyone's saying that the league's going to look into that at the end of the year and that they're going to ban the tush push, essentially. My argument to that is this. If it's so unstoppable and if it's such a dominant play, why are the Philadelphia Eagles the only team that's consistently good at running it? Every other team, when they've tried it, they're not as successful as it in it, not even remotely to the extent that Philadelphia is. So this whole idea that, it's an unstoppable play no matter who runs it. No, it's only unstoppable because the Eagles have the best offensive line in football and a fucking quarterback that squats like 500 fucking pounds. So to me, it's ridiculous. But back on the offense for a second. Is there a more complete receiver right now? Or I'll word it like this. Is there a receiver in the NFL that is more complete than A.J. Brown? And another question, is there a quarterback that runs more pissed off than Jalen Hurts does? Because, first of all, when it comes to A.J. Brown, he is like the ultimate weapon at wide receiver. He's so big. He's so fast. He's such a great route runner. He has excellent hands. Everything he does at such an elite level. He's such a physical presence. And he's also incredibly technically sound from just a pure receiver standpoint. Like I mentioned, he's such an incredible route runner. And it's a DB's worst nightmare because you don't know how to play him. You don't know how to cover him. You don't know whether to press him, play off him. It doesn't matter. He's going to win regardless. And then when he gets the ball in his hands, good luck trying to tackle him because he's not only incredibly tough to actually bring down, but he's such a threat after the catch because he has excellent speed. So he is the most complete receiver in football, in my opinion. And I don't know how you stop that. Like, I legitimately don't know how you stop that. And then you mix in the rapport he has with Jalen Hurts, and it's like, it's not even fair. It really isn't even fair. And then you talk about Jalen Hurts, not just his improvements he's made over the years as a passer, but also when you see him as a runner as well. I mean, we knew this even back to his days at Alabama, how great of a runner he is. But even then, like, you watch this game against the Rams, and there were times where he would escape the pocket. He would get hit like 3 times after he passed the line of scrimmage, and he would just stay on his feet and go for another 4 or 5 yards after contact. It's like your quarterback should not be picking up 5 yards after contact. Like, it is unbelievable. And it really is fun to watch. And like I said, I don't know how you stop this offense once it does get fully clicking. Yeah, it really is something to watch, and the rest of the NFL should be absolutely terrified of them in the future. And as far as the Rams go, I didn't know how to think about the Rams coming into this year. I thought they were going to be one of the bottom feeders as well, along with the Arizona Cardinals. Because, they had so many missing pieces. We didn't know what was going on with Cooper Kupp. Aaron Donald was getting up there in age. Matthew Stafford was getting up there in age and also dealing with injury issues himself. We did not know what this team was going to look like. And I'm not going to say they've been great, but they've been pretty damn good as well. Puka Nacua obviously has just come out of complete nowhere. Nobody was expecting this kind of production out of somebody like Puka Nacua. And now I think he's going to get even more attention now that Cooper Kupp has not only returned, but he went into this game and it looked like he never was out. It looked like he never got injured. He came in and was right back to playing like the elite Cooper Kupp that he was before. First game back against a good Philly defense and immediately gets 100 yards receiving on the day. In fact, between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, they had 15 catches between the two of them combined. 15 catches. Cooper Kupp had, I think it was 110. Puka Nacua had 71 yards and one touchdown between the two of them. Puka Nacua was the one that scored the one touchdown. Is this potentially the next great receiver duo? You know, they're not the most explosive, but holy shit, are they reliable. You know, Cooper Kupp has always been a really excellent route runner and really shifty after the catch. And Puka Nacua obviously is an incredible possession receiver that also has some good playmaking ability after when he has the ball in his hands. So, you know, they might not be the most explosive receiver duo in the league, but they're sure as shit going to be the most reliable. So that is something to really keep an eye on. And I am really intrigued to see how this offense grows the more Cooper Kupp gets, I was going to say, as he gets more readjusted to playing football again. But like I said, he looked like he didn't miss a beat on Sunday. So I'm really excited to see how this Rams offense looks. And on their defense, I'm shocked at how much better this defense looked than I thought it would. Because I looked at this defense going into the year and I'm like, this is Aaron Donald and nobody else. You know, this team they have so many young guys, so many unproven guys, and they've played really freaking well for the most part. I mean, yeah, Aaron Donald's the big name, but everybody else has been playing really freaking well on that defense. And I'm intrigued to see what this Rams team is going to look like headed forward. Next game I want to talk about is the Jets at the Broncos. And this was I guess you could say, the Nathaniel Hackett revenge game. But this was another game that I was actually really fascinated with coming into the week because the Jets looked like they were on the downward spiral after the Rodgers injury and Zach Wilson came back in. But they went in on Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs last week and really played well. Zach Wilson actually outperformed Patrick Mahomes last week. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, this team might have something a little bit here. And the Denver Broncos, you know, they had a huge win last week against a bad Bears team. The week after, they got humiliated by Miami. So I was intrigued, especially with everything that Sean Payton said in the offseason about Nathaniel Hackett and saying like it was the worst coaching job he'd ever seen and, you know, shit like that. So this was definitely I'm intrigued here. And the New York Jets came out with a win. They won 31-21, and I'll start with the New York Jets first because that defense is legit. That defense is really freaking talented. They play like animals. It is so freaking good how good that defense is. And offensively, I'm not going to say Zach Wilson played great, but he played okay. He was what they needed him to be, which was be just a game manager and just let the run game handle everything. And boy, howdy did the run game handle everything. Breece Hall looks completely back to form. He was breaking off explosive runs after explosive runs. He was just carving up that Bronco defense that looks like a complete shell of itself, you know, after how great they were last year. And, you know, this is a really interesting formula. And I think if the Jets have a chance to win this year and sneak into the playoffs, this is the formula they're going to have to run with. No pun intended. Is running the football with Breece Hall and just taking the pressure off of Zach Wilson and not making him feel like the game, it has to be won through him. Because, you know, yes, he was a little more relaxed. He's gotten a little more relaxed. He's not his panicky self like he was before heading into last week. But he's still not somebody that you feel fully confident in when it comes to game on the line situation. All right, let's put the ball in Zach's hands and let him make a play. You're still not fully confident with that yet. You are confident with what Breece Hall can do out of the backfield, though. And if you're going to win football games with this defense playing the way it is, that's the way that this team is going to have to sneak into the postseason this year. So that's for the New York Jets. And the Denver Broncos, I mean, which is worse? Losing in close, heartbreaking fashion or getting blown out by 50 points? Which is more humiliating? I don't know. Broncos fans, you'll have to answer that. But, man, Denver, I don't even know how to feel about them anymore. They just look stuck. Every time this team, you think that they might improve. Every time you think that this team has a chance to build upon some kind of momentum and capture some kind of lightning in a bottle and do something, not only do they disappoint, they actually take multiple steps backwards. Like, there was a sequence in this game in the middle of the third quarter, and this sequence perfectly sums up the Broncos, not just this year, but the Broncos of last year too. Where they stall out, they punt the ball away. Xavier Gibson for the New York Jets, their punt returner, loses the ball in the sun, muffs it. Denver falls back on it, and they fall back on it close to the Jet 40-yard line. So they get a huge break. They get the ball in Jet territory. Perfect situation for them to get some kind of points. And I think like the second, third play of that new drive, they try to get too cute. They do this pitch to the running back, end around to a receiver, and then he pitches it back to Marvin Mims. The pitch was a little too far behind him. Mims can't get it, fumbles it, and the Jets fall right back on it. Like, that sequence perfectly sums up the Denver Broncos of the last 2 years. A team where it's like, you think they have a chance at momentum. You think they have a chance to get something really good, only to just kick you square in the dick. So, and again, it all falls, I think, on, I don't even know who it falls on, because there's like, they have talent. They do have talent. You know, this team, just a couple of years ago, this team was viewed as something that was like a real quarterback away from potentially competing. And you thought that for a reason, because, you know, Courtland Sutton's a really good young player. Jerry Jeudy has some upside, but I'm done with trying to think Jerry Jeudy can be some good. I mean, Marvin Mims is their most explosive player, but they barely even play him most of the time. I will say, though, Jaleel McLaughlin, he looks like a stud. Like, if you want some kind of momentum, at least in your running game, or at least as a receiver out of the backfield, Jaleel McLaughlin looks like a hit. So, hey, at least you got that, Denver. At least you found something there. That's something to get excited about. But everything else just looks, ugh. And then Russell Wilson, with a chance down by 3, a chance to drive down the field to tie the game or potentially win it, fumbles the ball after getting sacked. The defender didn't even hit the ball. He got hit from behind, and then he just dropped the ball. And then Bryce Hall scoops and scores it, and that was the game. And to me, it all kind of falls on Sean Payton, who has really had to eat his words and eat a pile of shit in the offseason. You know, he was going on, remember in training camp, he was going on a rant talking about how this is the worst coaching job he's ever seen last year. You know, they didn't do anything. The organization looked like it didn't know what to fucking do. He said everything looked bad. He trashed the organization that he was now the head coach of. And they're now looking at this team where it's like, okay, they're scoring a little more points per game than they did last year, but it pretty much looks like it's the exact same offense. I mean, Russ has played better. He's played better than he did last year. That's really the only thing you can say as far as an improvement goes, outside of scoring like a little more points than you did all last year. But this team still looks like it can't consistently move the ball. This team still looks like it can't put together a cohesive drive back to back. And Sean Payton's an offensive coach. He's the offensive guru. That's his thing. That mixed in with the fact that the defense looks significantly worse because you just refuse to keep Ejiro Evero. They look broken. This is a franchise that just looks broken. And losing this week in that way to a team whose offensive coordinator was the guy that you trashed in training camp. And look, we all know Nathaniel Hackett was in over his head. We knew Nathaniel Hackett wasn't a good head coach. But to see him go into your building and slap you around on the ground, and there wasn't a goddamn thing you could do to stop it. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what the fuck is. But yeah, Sean Payton looks like he's in a spot where he should have just stayed in TV. He should have just stayed in the NBC studio with his suit and tie on, talking on the Monday Night Football crew. Not the Monday Night Football crew, the Sunday Night Football crew. Yeah, this looks bad. And I don't even know what else to say. It's just same shit, different toilet. That's all it is, man. It's a terrible situation in Denver right now. And I don't know what you could possibly do to get out of it. Final game I want to talk about here is Sunday Night Football. Cowboys and 49ers. This was a game that I was really excited for. This is a game that I thought heading into it was like, all right, this is a potential playoff matchup for sure. And, this was going to be two heavyweight teams going at it. This is also a true test for the Dallas Cowboys to prove that they're legitimate. And, should I start positively or should I start negatively? I'll start positively. Are the 49ers the most talented football team we've ever seen? Honestly, because this 49er team is just incredible. Where do we start? I'll start with Brock Purdy, who every game that passes, he looks more and more like the franchise quarterback that this team has been looking for. And, he has that thing. Because, we all know the story. Mr. Irrelevant, doesn't have a whole lot of physical upside. But the one thing he does have that makes him so successful is his ability to see the field. His ability to process things super fast. People have said, they watch film on him, and it's so incredible how he goes from read 1 to read 2 to read 3. He just zips through his reads so fast and always seems to make the right decision. Now, he's not perfect. I mean, you saw even in the Rams game a couple weeks ago where there were a couple deep shots that he missed that if he would have hit, it would have really blown the doors open. But he is still so smart, always knows where to go with the football. He is like a machine running this offense. It is a masterclass to watch. And then you talk about the talent around him. Christian McCaffrey, I've said for years, is the ultimate weapon on offense in the entire NFL. He's the definition of do-it-all, can run in between the tackles, excellent receiver out of the backfield. He is the complete offensive weapon. Debo is incredible. They even ran him out of the backfield a few times in this game. He's so versatile in that regard. And then George Kittle, hey, 3 touchdowns, three touchdowns on 3 receptions. Hey, bro, it's like it looked like Brady to Gronk out there with how Purdy was slinging that thing to George Kittle. And man, they just stomped on a great Dallas Cowboy defense. That's a great Cowboy defense that San Francisco just blew right through. And it makes you wonder, it's like, who the hell's gonna beat this 49er team? I legitimately think that this 49er team is good enough to go undefeated. Honestly, I really do. This is I can't envision a world because the offense looks great. The defense is phenomenal. I mean, we all know how great Nick Bosa is, but those linebackers they have are just insane. Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw they play like bats out of hell. And they are just all over the place, and it is so fun to watch. They look unstoppable. This is an unstoppable team as of right now, and I don't know who the hell's going to beat them. Actually, you know what? Let's look at their schedule right now. Let's take a quick gander at the 49ers' schedule for the remainder of this season. So they play Cleveland next week. I can imagine they probably win that game. Then they play the Vikings. That's a dub. Cincinnati, San Francisco could be a fun one now that the Bengals seem to have gotten back on track. Jacksonville, I don't know if Jacksonville's talented enough to beat them. Tampa, Seattle, Philadelphia on December 3rd. If they're both still undefeated by that point, maybe. That could be fun. Philly's so far, because after that they got Seattle again, Arizona, Baltimore, Washington, and the Rams to end the year. Philly might be the only shot of beating them at this point in time. Realistically, I mean, the Rams gave them a little hell, but I don't know who beats this team realistically. This is gonna be a fun team to watch for the remainder of the year, and I'm really excited to see how this plays out. Now for the Dallas Cowboys. This was their prove-it game, in a way. This was their prove-it game of, all right, we are here. This is our time to show that we are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And they went out and laid the egg of all eggs. Well, not the egg of all eggs, but they laid a pretty damn fucking big one. The defense, like I said, couldn't stop the 49er offense worth a shit. The lone touchdown for the Cowboys in this game came from Kevontae Turpin, who's primarily their punt returner. And, the offense for the Dallas just took a massive step back. We were praising Dak all year because he was so turnover prone last year, led the league in interceptions last year. He was so turnover prone last year, and we're like, this Cowboys team cannot be successful if he keeps turning the ball over like this. And he came into this year, he had 1 interception, I think. Yeah, 1 interception all year so far. He's protected the football incredibly well. And in this game, he throws 3 interceptions. I think all of them were in the second half. One of them was a fluky thing where it got batted into the air and landed into Fred Warner's hands. But the last 2, one of them he tried to fit a needle in there, and linebacker picked it off. But then the second one was brutal. Or was it the first one? I think it was the first one, where it was basically just an arm punt. He just chucked that thing up there, and the free safety was the only guy that had a legitimate shot at getting it. And he got it. It almost was like the spotlight became too bright for this Cowboys team. They played against a legit elite force in the 49ers on Sunday Night Football in front of the nation. it's a huge marquee matchup. Everyone's going to watch it, even just from a historical standpoint. Niners, Cowboys, like this is a intense historical rivalry. People were going to tune in and watch this. And the Cowboys just, they looked like they didn't belong. And it seems like every single year this happens with the Cowboys, where they get a lot of hype. A lot of that hype is put on by themselves, but they have talent, they have the pieces to compete, and they just can never seem to get over that hump. It happens every single year with this team. Even going back to the days they had Tony Romo and T.O. and, they have, it's been a consistent issue with this team since the mid-90s, where they just cannot seem to get out of their own way sometimes, it feels like. And it sucks because they have great talent. Now, it always takes joy. The nation always takes joy out of laughing at the Dallas Cowboys. I certainly do as well. But just from a pure football standpoint, it's like this team's probably sitting back and they look at this and it's like, what the hell is it going to take for us to legitimately compete? What's it going to take? What's it going to take for us to finally get over that hump and win? It's something they're going to have to think about. There's something going to have to figure out. First of all, Dak has to be more protective with the football. That's one. Number two, they have to be more consistent on offense. And three, defense just can't give up big plays like that, and they're capable of it. They're capable of not giving up big plays like that, but they have to be more consistent with it because you can't just expect Micah Parsons to just wreck shit every play. So they have a lot of questions that they need to figure out as far as what they need to do to be legitimate contenders in the NFC. But that is going to put a wrap on the video today. Like I said, if you have not already, please like, subscribe, and share the video if you have not done so already. And if you'd like to go support the channel, go to the link below to my Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. With that being said, I'm Double Diesel. Peace.